Greetings and welcome back to Northwest Small Batch Brewing. I am Stephen, and today's topic for discussion is degassing. Not that kind of gassing. We're talking about gases that are produced when you ferment and removing those gases. I have occasionally come across information where people are saying to always degas your fermentation, that you have to get rid of the old gas because it smells bad and it's old and it has bad smells and tastes, and you have to remove it before you carbonate or do whatever you're going to do. Man, I've never experienced this. I've never had this happen. I just don't think it's true. So here's what I have to say about degassing. So what it is that you've got your home brew, you've got it fermenting, and naturally occurring, as we probably all know, you get carbon dioxide, right? That's what gives you the carbonation. That happens naturally. I just don't buy into the idea that by the end of, for example, I let my fermentations go for a full month, which is longer than a lot of people do. So if anything, I would notice this probably more than anyone else. If you leave this carbonation that's in your brew and then you just bottle it up or whatever, I would notice the off flavors, because that's a long time to compare to some people. Here's what I'll say about degassing. I think it depends what you're making, okay? There is a gas that is produced occasionally in addition to the carbon dioxide. It is nitric or nitrous sulfide, something like that. And it, just like the name sulfide, so it comes from the word sulfur. So it has like a rotten egg kind of smell to it. That gas is produced when yeast is stressed. So I guess I would say that if you have stressed your yeast and you're getting that smell, you have a bigger problem, right? You could try degassing, and when I say degassing, I mean, it means that what you're basically doing is gently stirring. So you're not splashing, because you want to introduce any oxygen, but just gently stirring your brew to release all the gas out of it, all the bubbles and everything. So I guess you could do that and try to get rid of the sulfury, gas. But if you have that smell in your brew to begin with, it means you've stressed your yeast. So you should be looking at a bigger picture, which is, what did I do that caused the yeast to be stressed? Was it too hot a temperature for fermentation? Was it too cold? Did I not pitch enough yeast? Go through the list, figure out what caused it, because you don't want that to be happening every time you make a home brew. So you want to fix that problem right from the start. So realistically, as long as your yeast isn't stressed, you should only need to degas if you're making a still beverage. And that's usually going to be wine or mead. That's a higher alcohol content. It is very common with those kinds of brews to degas because you don't want carbonation, right? And even worse than carbonation is when you have just a hint of carbonation. We call it, I think it's called pitolence. I know it sounds like a bad word, but it means that it's just a barely a hint, right, of carbonation. So when you drink it, it's almost worse because it makes it taste flat. It's like a flat soda. It's pitolent. So you really want to degas like wines and meads and things that you're going to drink that you don't want to be carbonated. You want to get rid of all that gas, and that's how you do it. Now they do sell these these long plastic devices, like a rod that has a hook on the end, and you can actually hook it into a regular drill, like a drill bit, and then you can just and it'll spin. I'm worried that would spin too much. I mean, like I said, we don't want to introduce oxygen and oxidize your brew. So how long do you stir, right? How long do you do it to get rid of the gas? Well, The answer is as long as necessary. While you're stirring it, you're going to notice fizzing and stuff coming up to the top. So when that fizzing stops, stop stirring it. And you might even want to give it a day and then stir it again. Because if your yeast is still actively fermenting, it's going to continue to be putting gas into your brew. And so if you degas it too early, you've kind of wasted your time because you're just going to have to do it again. So you want to make sure that the brew has sat there for a significant amount of time to be able to off gas. And then but then you can degas by hand naturally. So unless you're making wine or mead or something like that, that's a still beverage. Maybe you're making a still cider. For the most part, my channel basically deals with beer and a few little experiments here and there, but mostly it's beer. And with beer, I can't think of a time when you're gonna degas, because I don't know of any beer that you drink that's totally flat. Even stouts, even though they're not usually as much carbonation, they still have carbonation, or you use nitro or whatever. But so I can't imagine degassing your beer. I don't know anybody who degasses, stirs their beer and degasses it and then force carbs it afterwards. It's not the CO2 that gives you the off flavors. The off flavors come from, like I said, the yeast getting stressed out and producing this other gas that has that sort of stinky egg smell. So bottom line is, you don't need to degas unless you're specifically trying to make a still beverage. There is a little secret to get rid of that sort of sulfury smell. So if you do end up stressing your yeast and you get that sulfur smell, instead of trying to degas it and seeing if you can get rid of that smell, take a little bit of copper. You can buy kind of like the scrubby, I don't know if they have them around the world, but they have these things here called SOS pads. They sell something similar to that, but it's copper. So it's just a little ball of copper, like wire mesh. And you can buy them usually at homebrew stores and stuff. You can get them online. I'm sure you can get them on Amazon. You just throw just a small, maybe sort of baseball, not even baseball, smaller than a baseball size ball, into your homebrew. And I think probably give it 24 hours and then check it out, pull it out and taste it. What happens is the metal in the copper reacts to the chemical that's creating the stinky egg smell in your beer, and it actually removes it or converts it. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's an old moonshiner trick that you'll find a lot of times, like distilleries that are making like whiskey and stuff will oftentimes make sure it comes in contact with copper because it removes the sulfur from distillate. So if it works for distilling, yeah, it'll work for your homebrew. So if you do notice that, you can save your beer by putting some copper, for like 24 hours or whatever. And then, you shouldn't have to leave it in there too long, but it will react and remove that smell. So there's a little secret tip for you. Anything else about nothing else about degassing except that kind of on a side comment is that, if you're one of those people that thinks that watching the airlock is a good way to see whether your beer is finished fermenting. It's not, spoiler. But some people watch the bubbles that are coming through the airlock and then they say, oh, well, it stopped bubbling. And then they think it's done. And then like a few days later, it starts bubbling again. Here's the thing. There's a couple problems with using that as like a metric as to whether or not your beer is ready. Number one is it's so easy to have a leak where air is escaping through other parts of the lid or whatever that you cannot use that as a guarantee that your fermentation is done. Also, there's something called off-gassing. Similar to degassing, off-gassing is the brew's natural way of degassing. All that means is that over time, since you don't have it sealed, you just have an airlock. So just like opening a bottle of soda and leaving it open, over time, the carbon dioxide and stuff comes to the top and it escapes through your airlock. So it may slow down or stop for a while until it builds up and then pushes through. So you will find a lot of times that a brew could be sitting for a month and periodically be bubbling away. And it's not always because it's fermenting. A lot of times it's just degassing. Yeah. So hopefully that clears up whether you should degas and when you should degas. So I guess to summarize, in my opinion, the only time you'd want to degas is if you're purposely making like a still wine or mead or cider that's not carbonated and you're trying to get rid of all the carbonation. If you have bad flavors, off flavors coming from your brew, and you're suspecting that it's coming from gassing, it's because the yeast was stressed and it created this, nitrous sulfide or whatever that has that sulfury smell. So use the little trick of putting some copper in it, and that'll remove that smell. And it avoids the chances of adding oxygen to your brew because, unless you're purposely trying to make a still beverage, I would say you want to try to avoid as much sort of, spinning and splashing, and you don't want to add oxygen at that point. Once it's started fermenting, you just want to avoid trying to add any oxygen as possible. Some beers are more sensitive than others to that, but it's just a good rule to try to avoid it as much as possible. So, I don't think I already said it. If you like my channel, if you like homebrewing, you like testing out theories, please, it would help me out so much if you hit the like button, the little thumbs up, bell icon, and hit the subscribe button while you're there. That way you'll get notified every time I put out a new video. And that's really all I have for today. So I will see you in a week with another fantastic video or brew. We'll see how it goes. In the meantime, cheers, happy brewing, and I'll see you soon.